Alrighty, so welcome to the unofficial review of the Leeds Cup final between Inter Miami versus Nashville SC. As this game will be happening on Saturday. It will be happening at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. And as always, we're gonna start first talk about how both of these teams made it to the Leeds Cup final. And there's no doubt that when you look at these two teams that made it to the Leeds Cup final, both of these teams kind of reached the final in a very different way. Whereas Inter Miami, I know a lot of people are going to say that it was rigged for them to get to the final. They did have to face some adversity on the way too, but it's definitely nothing compared to Nashville SC. I mean, at one point in this tournament, we thought Nashville was done and that they looked like they were eliminated until they wasn't, and we'll get to talk about their road to the Leeds Cup final first. But we'll start with Inter Miami and how they got to the Leeds Cup final. Well, in the group stage, which was a highly anticipated group stage because the first game between Inter Miami versus Cruz Azul, that was the game everybody was talking about because that was the debut of Lionel Messi. We were all waiting for that moment to happen, and it did happen, and it definitely did not disappoint. He hit a walk-off free kick goal that seems like something out of a movie script, something that I think is going to go down as one of the greatest moments in MLS history, right up there in terms of Zlatan scoring on his debut of just an incredible 40-yard volley shot that he had against LAFC in El Tráfico a couple of years ago, and Miami was able to win 2-1 against Cruz Azul. But what is also kind of forgotten in that game is the fact that Cruz Azul were by far the better team in that one. I mean, Miami, they were kind of second best at times until Messi does arrive, and people also forget that Drake Calendar had an incredible game in that one, and he one of the big reasons why it 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 was able to keep Miami in the game for so long, and eventually had that magical moment for Messi scoring a walk off free kick goal. Then in the very next game, Miami, they absolutely dominated Atlanta United in that one. It was a 4-0 win, and this is when we started to see that Messi is a real, I mean, he has been absolutely sensational with 9 goals so far in this tournament. But obviously, a lot of people say, well, Messi had a great moment there, but how can he, of course, follow that? Well, how about follow that with two more goals in that game against Atlanta United, and Miami easily cruised to a victory there and get themselves into the knockout round, which in the knockout round, I mean, this was also one of the more anticipated game of the round of 32. It's Inter Miami versus Orlando City, and I know the Florida Derby is not really been talked as one of the more premier derby we've seen in MLS. I feel like we maybe see that in the future too, because this was a game where I think out of all of these games that Inter Miami has played besides the semifinal game, this might be one of the more challenging ones because Orlando City has had Miami number at time, but there's a big question of, well, now we get into the knockout round, now we get to the serious stuff. Will Miami and Messi and his company will stepped up, and they stepped up in a big way, winning 3-1 in that one. I believe Messi got like a 2 goals in that game too. Then in the round of 16, this was probably the closest that Miami came in terms of getting eliminated. I mean, this was a game where I think if you want to talk about adversity, this was the one where Miami definitely faced adversity. They were down 2 goals twice in this one. First down 3-1 in this one, then down 4-2. It looked like all hopes were lost. And then the scriptwriter decided to kind of make things incredibly chaotic with them getting one back. And of course, it has to be Messi scoring. Not a walk-off free kick goal this time, but a free kick goal to tie it. Like, I think everybody saw that one coming when Messi was stepping up to take this free kick around the 80th minute mark to tie the game up at 4 apiece. And in the end, once that goal went in, I mean, it's pretty clear that who was going to win that one. It's probably not going to be Dallas, and Miami was able to advance to the quarterfinal, winning in the PK shootout, and that's the only time that they have faced the PK shootout, and the only time where Miami was really pushed to the brink of potentially getting eliminated. Because the next game, in the game against Charlotte FC, I mean, again, this is where I can understand why there are some people say that the scriptwriter are rigging them to make sure that they have the easiest role possible. Because again, Charlotte, I mean, this is no offense to Charlotte. Charlotte has had a great tournament, but they have to step aside in terms of the Messi show in this Leeds Cup tournament, and it's no surprise that they lost 4-0 in that one with Miami making to the semifinal. But this is where I thought it was really the biggest test for Inter Miami. I mean, yes, so far it's been relatively easy when you look at the teams that they face. A lot of people say, well, these are against easy team. What happened if they do face against the likes of the Philadelphia Union, who I said before, I thought they were going to be one of the favorites of winning this tournament, and especially how they've been playing throughout the tournament. Only give up 4 goals and look really resilient to the defensive end. It's going to really test Messi and his company. All Messi basically did is just make that Philadelphia Union defense look completely out of depth. I mean, it was crazy how Miami was able easily cut through that Union defense. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that the Union, this has also been a team that has just, it feels like they have this curse of the fact that when they're playing a big game, like this, a make or break kind of game that can change their fortune in terms of their team history, they completely crumble. And we saw it again in this one, just going 3-0 down at halftime and eventually losing this one 4-1 to Inter Miami. And that, I think that game really kind of sent a message to all those doubters and all those haters will say that, yeah, Inter Miami got an easy 0. Now we'll see when they do face against a good team how they do. Yeah, it turns out they did relatively well, and that was also a game where I think Messi scored another goal in that one. I think he also scored 2 goals in that one too, and that's how Inter Miami is now in the final. Which again, I know there's gonna be people that's gonna say it's scripted. It's right clearly from the beginning that Miami is gonna make it to the final, but their opponent that they're facing is definitely by no means being the team that everybody thought that will make it to the final. In fact, coming out of the West region, when you look at all the team in the West region, I mean, there are some really good teams. I did not think Nashville was that team to make it out of this. In fact, you can even talk to the most optimistic Nashville SC fans. They wouldn't think that they in their craziest dream that they would be the one that be reaching to the Leeds Cup final. And as I mentioned before, there was even at one point looked like they were done. Like it looked like they were eliminated, and then they wasn't, and that's where it really kind of sparked the controversy with refereeing decision and sparked the outrage between Liga MX's teams and even the league itself. But in the group stage, Nashville, of course, their first game against the Colorado Rapids. I mean, that was a game where it was kind of uneventful. They were relatively dominant, though, they did make it a little bit interesting with the Rapids getting one back. They were able to hold on to win 2-1 in that one. And then the very next game, they actually lost this one. So, despite the fact that Miami was perfect throughout their run to the Leagues Cup final, that was not the case for Nashville. They actually did lose a game. They lost to Toluca in this one. And this was a really good game too, because Nashville, they found themselves twice being up in this game and then somehow found themselves 4-2 down, and then able to pull one back. It looked like the momentum was with them, only for them to fall short. Though I will say that, to Nashville credit, they did show a lot of fight back, and Toluca, a team that at that point I thought they would really fly on the radar. This was a really dangerous Toluca team, and that unfortunately Nashville just kind of ran into the path of them. Then we get to the knockout round, and boy, oh boy, this is where, yeah, we can safely say that Nashville definitely had a crazy way to get into the final. Because in the first round, 32, a lot of people probably have written them off when they face against FC Cincinnati on the road. I mean, after all, Cincinnati has never lost at home this season. That all changes in this one, as Nashville was able to win 5-4 in a PK shootout, and Nashville actually led in this game. Like, they had a 1-0 lead in this one. They kind of let it slip out of their hands. It looked like that was pretty much it, but credit to them. They prevail in the PK shootout. And then this is where we get to the controversy. So this game against Club America and Nashville, again, say what you say about this game and the sheer chaos and mess that we saw in the PK shootout. At the end of the day, I'm just gonna repeat what I said that night. They made the right call in the end. It was the right call with the way that they said that the Club America goalkeeper Maligan was all his lines there. And while the way that they of course handled it was not good whatsoever, it's very similar to what we saw in the game between NYCFC and Orlando City in the playoffs a couple of years ago. At the end of the day, as long as they got the right call, I have no problem with that. And that, Nashville, they were definitely gifted by the sports god in terms of that, and they were able to prevail, winning 6-5 in the PK shootout after drawing 2-2 in that game. And keep in mind, that game, I know everybody is gonna remember the very controversial PK shootout. But don't forget, Nashville was literally seconds away from getting eliminated, even before the PK shootout. I mean, if it wasn't for Sam Surridge scoring on his debut there, Nashville would have been out at the round of 16. Then we get to the quarterfinal where it kind of become a little less dramatic. They were able to win 5-0 against Minnesota. Obviously, it helps the fact that Minnesota basically did their typical Minnesota sports culture, just completely collapsing in big games after the red car happened and Nashville just roll over the Loons in that one to reach the semifinal. And then the semifinal, I talk about Inter Miami having a tough test against the Philadelphia Union. The same goes for Nashville because this was really the game where you think, well, Nashville has had a great run. But this maybe comes to an end because Rayados has been so good so far this tournament. They have shown multiple times that they have that never say die mentality, even though they were down, and also find ways to be able to overpower an MLS team. That did not happen in this one. In fact, I think that semifinal game was probably the best I've seen Nashville play. Uh, not only in this tournament, but really in their club history. I mean, that was just a perfect game that Nashville has played. A very, very Gary Smith kind of type of game that they played throughout, and they deserve to win that one and move on into the final. Albeit that was also a game that was mirrored by some controversy, especially with a lot of Rayados fans will be very angry about the of them not getting a penalty back in the 55th minute. That if they did get a penalty and they would have scored that penalty, maybe the result would have been different than the 2-0 scoreline that Nashville won against Rayados. Now we get to the five biggest talking points coming into this Leagues Cup final. Obviously, the biggest talking point is obviously how Messi is gonna do now. He's in the cup final and able to go to another cup final. But I think the big talk point is Messi versus Hani Mukhtar because here you have the greatest player of all time and the best number 10 in the world here, facing against arguably the best number 10 in the league, and Hani Mukhtar. I mean, he won the MVP last year for a reason, and even though, he has had his struggle this season, I think that game against Minnesota, that game really reunite his confidence because coming into that game, he was really struggling. You can even tell with the way that his finishing too. He was low on confidence, but as soon as he scored that goal, his confidence was back up, and he's pretty much a classic example of what happened when a goal scorer is able to get a goal and a goal drought. Like when you finally get a goal and a goal drought, your confidence is going to go back up, and it definitely seems like that case, especially in that game against Rioto. So yeah, it should be very interesting to see the world's best number 10 against arguably the league's best number 10 and definitely the league's best number 10 for last season to play. But besides that, the big name player, I also want to talk about the supporting cast, and that's going to be a big talking point too. Because at the end of the day, I know the big talking point would be Messi and Mukhtar, but also how the supporting cast is going to. Who has the advantage of that? For me, I would say Miami does have the advantage because besides Messi, you have Jordi Alba, Sergio Busquets, and if you don't even want to include them, talk about players that have already been there for a while. Joseph Martinez, he's definitely shown flashes of the old Joseph from the last couple of games that have really rejuvenized. Robert Taylor, I mean, a guy that has not had a good season ever since Messi has come. He's probably the biggest benefactor in terms of him. And even some of their homegrown in Ruiz and Kamaski also stepped up in a big moment in these last couple of games too. When you compare it to this Nashville supporting cast, yes, Jacob Schaffelberg is definitely a good supporting cast for Hani Mukhtar, and the same goes for Sam Surridge too. I mean, what a signing it's been. But then after that, there's a lot of question mark after that. I mean, there's a lot of question mark of whether their supporting cast, of course, will stepped up. I mean, this is kind of mostly on the attacking end. There's no doubt on the defensive end, the supporting cast for Nashville is going to be more stronger, and this is where I think maybe you could say that. Well, yes, if you talk about attacking supporting cast, Miami does have the advantage, but on the defensive end, yeah, Nashville does have the advantage. I mean, when you have probably the best defender in the league in Walker Zimmerman, back there, and I'm assuming most likely, one of their best goalkeeper, Joe Willis, is going to be back in this team, unless if they decide to put Elliot Penico back in, which I wouldn't be surprised that's the case because I think Penico has played relatively well in relief for Willis doing this Leeds Cup tournament. Yeah, I think if you look at defensive supporting cast, it's definitely going to be advantage for Nashville. But in terms of attacking supporting cast, I would give the advantage to Inter Miami. And also, we'll talk about the style of play because I think it's going to be interesting to see, like in terms of tactical wise, this is a very interesting game because Miami is a team that we know they love to have the ball. It's been shown in these Leeds Cup tournament. They have been dominate most of the possession, and that's kind of the way Tata Martino teams like to play. But the problem with that with that kind of style is that when you face against a team that don't want to have the ball and likes to play on the counterattack, yeah, that can be a problem. And I think we saw this with Miami when they play against Dallas, where Dallas was keep hitting them on the transition, and that I even said this as much as the Miami attack has been really good. I still have a lot of question mark in terms of the defense and even in the midfield, and especially when teams hit on the counter attack against them, they look really vulnerable when that happened. And as I said, we saw it with Dallas. They did that a lot, and they find a lot of success doing it. Well, guess which team has been really good in terms of playing on the transition, and this has always been the case for this team since they came to the league. Oh yeah, that's right. It's Nashville SC. I mean, this team, under Gary Smith, this is a team that likes to go on the counterattack. They're not afraid to trying to bunker and trying to make things hard, and that this is where it's gonna be very interesting to see whether or not if Miami has the the the, the style to kind of break this defense down. I mean, I think they could. I mean, they did a good job against a Union defense that, you could say that the Union defense is probably the best in the league, and Miami just ran right against them. But it's going to be interesting to see how they do in terms of on the transitional play because I think one thing that you also don't remember in that Union game is that despite the fact Miami was very clinical, Union had chances of their own, and they also had some success in terms of going on the transition. And knowing Nashville is definitely a much better team in terms of the transitional play than what we see with the Union. Yeah, this could be very interesting. We could maybe be seeing something similar to the game between Dallas and Inter Miami, where Miami might be scrambling at the back a little bit because of how quick this Nashville team can go on the transition. And then set pieces, I feel like advantage Nashville with a question mark because I do think that maybe Nashville does have the advantage. I mean, what's interesting about set pieces is the fact that both of these teams have been pretty good in terms of set pieces in terms of scoring it. I mean, when you have the likes of Lionel Messi scoring on the or taking free kicks, you're gonna always have a shot in terms of scoring, and most time or not, it's gonna go into the back net. But what about Nashville too? I mean, their set piece. I mean, when you have the guys like Walker Zimmerman that's dunking over player head, and that's pretty much also what's one of the DNA of Gary Smith team. They always are a lethal team on the set pieces. Maybe that it'll be interesting to see. But then also defending it too. The defending in terms of set pieces, this is where maybe I would give the slight edge to Nashville, even though they're not a very good team in terms of defending set piece. Miami is probably worse in terms of that. Miami is not a good team in terms of defending set pieces. I think this season they're like the worst team in terms of defending set pieces and have given up the most goal out of any team in terms of set pieces. So that should be very interesting to see when we get to that moment because I think set pieces, as the old saying goes, a change game, and I feel like it could definitely change how this game would turn out. And I won't be surprised if the goals would be scored in this game could come from mostly on set piece because after all, the last year MLS Cup final between LAFC versus the Philadelphia Union, where are those goals came from? Oh yeah, that's right. It came from the set pieces. So I feel like when you have like a cup final like that, with how tight things could be, set pieces could be a big difference in this one. And then lastly, I think this is probably the big one of the bigger talking point that not a lot of people are talking about is the referee decision. And this is where it's going to be very interesting to see how the referee calls this game. And I know Nashville fans, they have not been happy in terms of some of the refereeing decision that's kind of gone against them, and I won't be surprised the ref you suck chant will be ringing out very loudly throughout this game too. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how the referee will call this game, especially I know there's going to be some conspiracy theorists and some people that's going to say that yeah, they're going to try to make sure that refereeing decision is going to go completely in favor of Inter Miami because they have Messi after all. They're gonna give every decision to Lionel Messi if he wants it to. I don't know about that. I do think that that they're gonna try their best to make sure that the refereeing decision is clearly not biased toward one team. But then again, saying that once the game does play and depending on how referee decision is gonna go, I feel like there's gonna be complaint. Like referee decision and how the way the referee calls has always been one that it's almost impossible. You can see there's one game where everybody agrees with the refereeing decision. It's very rare that we've seen games where both team are happy with some of the referee decision. There's always going to be one team that's going to be unhappy or both team unhappy with it. And I feel like that could be, of course, is the same thing. But also, I'm just hoping it doesn't really kind of play into the problem in this final because again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. One of my worst nightmare about a soccer game and especially in this Leagues Cup tournament, a referee decision that will change the outcome of the game. Like that would be just the worst nightmare scenario to do that I will see it in a game that could be tainted because of a bad decision that's made by referees. I think it's going to be interesting to see how it's gonna go, and that we'll see whether or not if people are correct. The fact that maybe Miami will get some favorable decision in their way just because they have the greatest player of all time in their disposal. But there we have it. That is pretty much it in terms of kind of like an unofficial preview of this Leeds Cup final. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and also let me know in the comments below who's your prediction. Who's gonna win this? Is it Inter Miami? Is it Nashville? I'm not gonna make a prediction because if I make a prediction, I think people is gonna say I just jinxed the other team. So it's better for me to not make it and let you guys decide in the comment section below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys to like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.